Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here, and today we find ourselves as bomb defusal techs trying to defuse all of the explosives in just 10 minutes. Fuse Countdown is a cooperative, real-time dice placement game that's a standalone sequel to the popular game Fuse that offers new mechanisms and dice, but also can be mixed with the original as well. Now it's for 1 to 4 players, or up to 9 players if mixing with the original game. It takes 10 minutes to play, it's for ages 14 and up, and published by Renegade Game Studios. Now today, we'll be doing a rule school where I'll teach you how to set up and play the game so that you don't have to read the rulebook yourself. Now, I've placed timestamps just below me that you can jump to any section that you want. Without further ado, let's get started. Fuse Countdown is a cooperative dice placement game where you're trying to defuse the right amount of bombs before the 10-minute timer runs out. Dice will be rolled each round, and each player is trying to take a die and place it on one of their bomb cards. You'll be trying to follow certain rules like specific numbers or possible numbers, or even colors or color or number of any color. And hopefully you're able to place that on one of your cards and we'll get a new set of dice from the next player. And as the cards begin to fill up, you have less and less possibilities, and sometimes not all players will be able to take dice. And if you can't take a die that round, you'll have to take a spark card, which you'll also have to fulfill to win the game in the end. But you'll get some help from some split dice that are multiple colors, and when you complete a bomb, it'll be placed off to the side to score, but you'll also get a new one that you get to draft. There's all different cards that make you place dice in different configurations and stacking. And each player will have a special ability that they'll get to use when it's their turn to roll the dice. And not only is Fuse Countdown a standalone game, but you can also mix it with the original Fuse for varying levels of difficulty and to play up to 9 players. I'm going to teach you how to set up and play the training level mission. Now this is the full game, but the difficulty is notched down a little bit for your first game. Now first, you're going to find cards that have these backs on them. There's actually 2 different types of cards. These are bomb cards, and they have sort of a number in the upper right on the other side. These ones are the Fuse cards, and we're going to have you remove those because you don't need them in the training mission or even in the standard game. These are just for advanced. So they have the same backs as these. They look like this, but they either have 2 dice or they have a text ability, and they also have the sparks. So you're going to go through the deck, and you're going to find the cards that look like these 2 things, like this, and remove all of those from the game. This deck here has just the bomb cards. You're going to shuffle those cards up. Next, you're going to find the roll cards. They have this back. This is the front of them. They're each going to have their own individual special ability. You're going to shuffle this deck up. You're going to give 1 to each player face up in front of them. These rolls are quite straightforward in how they work, but later I'll show you where you can find some more information about them. Now back to that bomb deck. There's going to be a certain amount of cards you take. Again, we're going to play the training mission. So above here is the table of how many to take. And depending on the amount of players, so if you're playing a 3-player game, the training mission, you'll make sure that there's 24 cards in this bomb deck. You'll just take the ones that are not in part of the 24 and put them back in the box. You don't need them. And again, looking at the player count, you will put in a certain amount of cards. Now for all player counts except solo, you're going to deal 2 cards face up to each player, these bomb cards. Now if the first one is between 4 and 6 points, this one is because it's 5, the next card they get has to be between 1 and 3. That will help you get a legal starting combination there. And if the second card you drew was a 4 to 6, you simply would just replace it with another one, and you'd keep doing that until you get a second card that's 1 to 3, and then you shuffle the card you didn't use back into the deck. If you're playing a solo game, you're going to have 4 cards in front of you like this, with at least 3 different point values. Here we have 5, 1, and 3. This one's duplicated, but as long as you have 3 different point values, that's a legal combination. Next, you'll take the rest of that Fuse deck, and you'll place 5 cards in a line next to it, face up. These are the cards that you'll be getting after you start to complete the ones that are in front of you. Next, you're going to find the deck of spark cards that look like this, shuffle them up and place them face down next to the bomb deck. You'll take all of the dice that are in the game, place it in this nice bag, and shake it up so they're mixed well. Next, you'll search for the Renegade Games companion app if you don't already have it. You can find it in the App Store for your specific platform. And once you download it, you can open it because this app actually has many of Renegade's games there. And so we have different things that you could select. I actually had this running earlier. They have different games. Of course, you're going to be selecting Fuse. Only one player needs to have this because it will run. It's basically a 10-minute timer where you can save high scores. You can change the type of voice. Personality voice is really fun. You can pause it in the middle to talk and like help new players and things like that. I'll go over a little bit more about this now. But you just have to have this app ready. Make sure your volume is on. Now the object of the game is to complete bomb cards that are in front of you. These are going to have different requirements that we'll talk about in just a moment. And you're trying to get these done, which will allow you to draw new cards, and you're trying to get towards the bottom of that deck at the end of the game, and you're trying to get that done before the 10-minute timer runs out. Now when you're ready, you're going to hit the start button. This is going to start the clock. And you can always, again, pause it. You're not supposed to do it to talk about normal things, but in a new learning game when you're teaching people or you're learning and you want to look up a sign or something, you can pause it, but if you do that, just make sure nobody else is actually actively, playing, because it's a little bit against the rules there. So you can pause it for certain instances like that, and you're gonna have the timer going. So let's tell you what you're doing once this timer is going down. Now I'm gonna show you how the game works right now with 3 or more players. But if you are playing solo or with 2 players, you still need to watch this part, because this is gonna show you the core concepts of the game and how things work. And at the end of this, I'm going to go over how things change a little bit when you're playing solo or with 2 players. Now the game is played over turns. Each turn, a player is going to be a leader. They're going to take the bag and take a certain amount of dice out. Again, if you're playing with more than 3 players, the number of dice equal to the amount of players. So here we're playing a 4-player game, and so we have 4 dice there. Then it's real time. We're all trying to talk about who can use certain dice, who wants a certain dice, who can't use a certain dice. You're trying to take the one that you want the best, of course, but you're going to be talking with other people trying to make sure that everyone can take a die, because we're going to show you in just a moment, it's bad if you can't take dice. By the way, when you're drawing more dice, if there are some in the bag, but there's not enough left, then you draw just as many as there. But if there's no dice left in the bag at all, the mission fails and you all lose. That happens very rarely. Now, if by accident the leader pulled out too many dice, they need to put them all back in, shake it, and take out the right amount and roll them. Now remember, the leader's always rolling those dice that come out of that bag, but some rolls will allow you to change it. Now the only person that can use their roll is the leader, the one that took the dice out of the bag. Like this one, the equipment technician, after rolling the dice, you may change the number of any one rolled die. And again, they're talking with other people, and this is in real time. There's a lot of pressure going on. Feel free to walk through a round without the timer just to kind of get the flow of the game if you like. It takes the pressure off as you're learning. So let's look at my 2 bomb cards and these dice. Now these dice are usually in the middle of the table, but I pulled them in here just to kind of give you some examples. Now we're trying to place these. We're going to take 1 die and we're going to place it on here. And we have different requirements. Now this is a 1-point card. This is the easiest kind, and this is a 5. It's a lot more difficult. And here on either of these 2 spots, I can place a yellow die, and it doesn't matter what the number is. Here I could place either a 6 of any color, because there's no color behind it, or a red of any number. Okay, well that's a pretty easy one, except there's not yellows here. So I could take this 6 and place it just like that, and that would basically be my turn for this. Everyone's doing this in real time. Someone might be grabbing the dice, but you're kind of talking about it because you're working together. I could take this red and place it like there as well. But let's say some other players were saying, hey, you know what, I really need that black 6. Okay, you gotta, oh, I really, the red 3 is the only one I can play. Okay, you let someone else take that. And now we're down to here. And then you're like, okay, well, what's going on? Well, I could take this blue and go like this. Or, and because this one is you're building sort of a platform. So here has 4, and you see blue, and then a 5 of any color, a yellow of any number, a 6 of any color, and then once we get all those, we'll put a red on top. I'll show you in just a moment. So I could use this as a blue 4. But let's say in a previous turn, I already placed a blue here. And now all I have is a blue 4 and a black 2. You want to take a dice. I'm going to show you why in just a moment. Now remember, my roll here is after I can change the number of any one die. Now remember, only the leader can do this, and I happen to be the leader. So I'm going to take this and just make it a 5, and I'm going to place it right here, right next to it here, because we can see that this one could be any color, but it has to be a 5. Great, and let's say another player takes this one. Also note that at any point, if someone notices that anyone has placed a die which violates a card's dice requirements, you remove all of those dice from the card and put them back in the dice bag. Then you'd simply pass the bag to the next player clockwise. They do the same thing. They pull out the amount of dice equal to the number of players, they'll roll them, and you keep going as fast as you can, but as efficiently as possible too. So let's say after that leader rolled the dice and everyone took one and I was left with this that I can't place. We figured out that we weren't all going to be able to take a die. I'm the one that didn't end up taking it because I can't play this one here. It's not yellow, it's not red, it's not a 6, it's not a yellow, and it's not a 6. So I can't play this. If you can't place a die, you will take one of these spark cards and place it face up in front of you. And this just gives me an additional challenge. This does not count towards my 2 bomb cards that I'll always have in front of me, but it's an additional thing that I'll have to do before we win the game. And this is just saying, hey, this could be any number of any color, and this has to be an equal number of that one. Then you'll take the die that you did not use and you'll place it back in the bag. And again, at the end of the round, you'll pass it over. Now let's say it was a few turns later and this is the die I was able to take after talking with everybody. This is called a split die because it is one of 2 colors. It's either green or red. Every number kind of looks the same there. And this is cool because on this card, remember I need to put 4 on the bottom and then there's 1 sort of on a platform on top of it, and it had to be red. Could be any number, doesn't matter. So I could place this and I could complete this. Now when you complete this, the first thing you'll do is you'll take all of these dice, and by the way, anytime you're stacking dice, if one falls off, you basically have to put all of those dice back in the bag. So once you've removed these dice, because you've finished this, you're going to take this card and place it face down in a score pile near you. Next, you're going to take any one of the 5 bomb cards are in the row and you're going to place it face up in front of you. That's going to be a new one that you're working on. You're trying to find one usually that has like a good mix, not only of difficulty between what you have, but also ones that don't completely lock you out. Like this one's a yellow, a red, or 6, and I've got some different things. It gives me some more flexibility, but at the same time, you're trying to do it as fast as possible. So sometimes you just grab one. Now another thing I want to show you on the card is this. This means that this card cannot use any yellows because it has a yellow die and it's crossed out. So some dice in the upper left-hand corner have certain colors that you cannot use. And anytime anyone takes a card from this display, you will replace it like that so that there's always 5 to choose from. Now let me show you some different types of cards you may see. If you have a single spot to put a die and you see multiple things with an arrow, this means you have to stack all of these dice on this one spot. For example, this first one is a certain number. The next one on top of that has to be a smaller number, like a 1. Then the next one can be any number, any color, like a 5. And the next one has to be smaller than that, any color, like a 3. This one is now completed. Now remember, anytime you're stacking anything, if any of these dice fall, you must take all of them and place them back in the bag, and it says for any reason, meaning if someone hits the table, that counts. Now this one here is a wall configuration. They may be having a different amount of here. It's gonna be more than 1. Here we have 3 spots to place a die. This one just has to be a 1 or a 2. This one has to be a 5 or 6. Both of those can be any color. This one on the bottom needs to be a 3 or 4 of any color, and then the one on top of that has to be green of any number. So for example, it could look something like this. Remember, this is a split die. It's green or red. This needs to be green. So now that one's completed. Let's look at 2 more. Anytime you see something like this, it is a split die, which means it can be any of the ones that has 2 colors. Now on these ones, sometimes you'll see so the outline of this is green, and sometimes you see the outline is red. It doesn't mean that you have to place a red or a green die here. This means that this die has to be the first die you place on this card, and this has to be the last die you have to place on this card. So for example, here I have to first place a 6. But then maybe my next one, this could be a yellow or black of any number, I do that. And now this one could go here because any color, but it has to equal. So it's a 6, it's blue, and this is a 1 that's blue, so that works. And now this one I have to place last. And it can be any color, but it has to equal this one, so it has to be a 1, and so that would complete that one. Now on the back of the rule book, it has a really good icon reference that kind of shows you all of what the different things mean. Again, if it's your first time playing or you get a question, you can hit the pause button on the app. Everyone stops playing until you figure it out, and then you just go again. Now there's only one way to win the game. Let's say this is the bomb deck, someone just finished one, they just took one and they replaced it. Now, there is nothing left in the bomb deck. Once all of the face-up cards in the display are also taken, meaning there's no face-up bomb cards or none in the pile. At that point, you may have won, even if you don't have completed bomb cards, because as long as the display is empty and the deck is empty, you possibly could win, but there can't be any spark cards in front of any players. So maybe this is the only one out there, and maybe over a couple of turns, we're able to fill this one up and complete it. And at that point, we would then win the game. Now, if you're playing a solo game, you have 4 cards, you only pull out 3 dice, and you must place all 3. If you don't, you will get spark cards as normal. However, unlike the normal game, if during a turn you complete a card, you can actually facilitate replacing this card before you place all of your dice. So we could score this one and get a new bomb card, And if we wanted to, we could still place these on any legal places, and that might help you get you out of binds. In a 2-player game, you're only going to have 2 cards, but you will roll 4 dice, and each player has to take 2 dice, and you can place them on the same card. Like I could take this one and leave these 2 for my partner over there. Now, if you can't take 2 dice, you will remove those, put them back in the bag, and take spark cards as normal. However, much like the solo game, if you use your first die and you complete one, you will put these dice back in the bag, you'll score this as normal, and you'll get to pick another bomb card, and you might be able to pick one that will help you on your new card. Now, if you remember, you separated out these fuse cards at the beginning of the game because they're only used in the harder levels. Now, if you want to play one of those 3 highest levels, Expert, Elite, or Heroic, you'll be using these fuse cards. Now, you'll set up the bomb deck as normal, keep these separated, then you'll shuffle all your fuse cards up, and you'll take anywhere between 1 and 10 of them and shuffle them into your created bomb deck. This is going to make the game a lot harder. The more fuse cards you have, the more difficult it's going to be. Now, when a player defuses a bomb and they come to get a new one, and they take one, when it's refilled, if it is a fuse card, it's going to have a certain effect on there. And at this point, every player must remove a single die if they can, either a 1 or a black of any number there. Now, when doing this, you cannot take dice that are stacked below other dice. It's just looking top down. You've got to take one of them away. Now, if you don't have any dice that match the fuse card anyway, you're unaffected. But of course, there might be some text abilities that you'll just follow as well, like all players must draw a spark card. But as soon as you resolve this, you will then draw a new bomb card as normal. If it's another fuse, you resolve it again immediately. You just keep doing that until a non-fuse card comes up. Now, on page 11 of the rulebook, I told you I'd mentioned the roll cards a little bit more detail. This tells you the ability and some clarifications in case you need them. Now, this is a standalone game, but you can mix it with the original fuse. And on page 13 of the rules, it talks about combining sets and how you can make things easier, how you can make them harder, and how you can even play with up to 9 players. And I'll leave this to explore on your own. Now, in the app, you can keep track of your scores. It'll keep track of all your highest scores, but you can also do so on the back of the rulebook as well on page 14. Well, I hope this helped you dive right into Fuse Countdown faster than you normally would if you had to read the rulebook yourself. If you have further questions about the rules, the best place to do that is in a link that I've placed below for questions, because not only will I be able to answer them, but so will the designer and will Renegade Game Studios.